So good morning, it's day 17. I was just about leaving the motel that I stayed in overnight because there were just terrible thunderstorms and tornadoes moving through this whole area of the United States. They didn't hit my area until about 3 o'clock in the morning, and then there was thunder and lightning rolling through for probably 3 hours. There were places around here that were damaged by the tornadoes, but I just didn't want to deal with that in a tent. And I'm glad I stayed the night. It's actually not much more expensive in these budget motels than staying in a campground. Today I am headed northeast, still be in Tennessee all day. Stone River National Battlefield, I believe is the name of it, where another large battle took place in the Civil War. So that's my goal. I got 2 hours and 50 minutes of riding, so I'm not going to get there till near noon. But the other big task for me today is to get the oil changed on the bike. I hope to change my own oil and filter. I brought a filter with me, somewhere up near Murfreesboro. That's the plan. There's still bad weather to the south in Alabama, probably 30 miles south of me, but as I'm heading northeast, I think I'm going to be out of the bad weather, at least according to the weather reports that I've seen. And then I think it's still supposed to be kind of warm and muggy today, but tomorrow it's supposed to cool down and the humidity is supposed to drop. So we'll see how all that goes. The road is basically empty other than that one car ahead of me, and here comes the car the other direction. Everything looks so lush and green up here. This is the most comfortable I've been on a motorcycle in the last probably 8 days. Almost on the verge of being chilly. I am not complaining. And the sky keeps getting progressively clearer. So maybe I've broken free of all the heat and humidity. We'll see when I get off the bike. If I do. Army of the Tennessee Memorial Highway. Tennessee farmland. How pretty is that? Burrow. I'm getting there, but it's slow going a little bit. Speeds have been reduced because of the roads. Okay, I think I did my good deed for the day. Came around a curve, and there was a snapping turtle. His shell must have been, and unfortunately, like always, I didn't turn on my camera. His shell must have been 9-10 inches diameter. And when he saw my motorcycle approaching, he just froze in the middle of the roadway and pulled back into his shell. So I wasn't sure what to do because it was a blind curve coming around towards me, and he was trying to cross into the oncoming lane. So I figured he would be a goner if I just let him work his way across with the blind curve. So I stopped my bike, put on my blinker, and tried to pick him up. I'm not knowing anything about turtles, snapping turtles in particular, how far back his neck could reach when I grabbed his shell. So when I first picked him up, he extended his neck as far as he could to come back on my hand, and I dropped him a couple inches onto the pavement. He turned on his back, and then another car pulled up and blocked the oncoming lane to protect me, which was nice. I flipped the turtle back over and worked him over into the ditch on the side of the road. In retrospect, I don't think he could have reached my hand because I was pretty far back on his shell, but I guess I still don't know that for a fact. In any event, that's my good deed for the day. None of it caught on film. I just changed my oil and filter, so I am ready for another 3,500 miles. Found an accommodating auto parts store that sells motorcycle oil. Done plenty of field oil changes. Never done a filter change before. I brought a filter with me, K&M filter that has the nut attached to the top, which makes it easy with an adjustable wrench to undo it, given the limited clearance with the bash plate. And then before this trip I bought a 4-liter plastic top container with a sealable lid that fits in my back case, and I just store stuff in it, and it worked as a great oil catch. So the auto parts store had oil return, so I just emptied my oil, dumped it into their big canister for recycling, swapped out my filters, and I'm back on the road. I also tried to make a reservation for Cedars of Lebanon State Park, which is where I intend on staying tonight, but their software doesn't allow same-day reservations. No idea why the states do that. So I called the 800 number and talked to the agent, and they couldn't make a reservation either. But she could check her system and said that there was plenty of sites available, so I'm just going to do walk-in. It is 1:38, and I figure I got at least a couple hours here. I got a national cemetery here too. Well, look at that one. Listen to the cicadas. When I was changing my oil, they were like climbing all over me, getting all over the bike. $81,000 men from both sides participated in this battle. It took place over 3 days, but there's only battles on 2 days. December 31st, 1862, and January 2nd, 1863. There was a lull in action January 1st. And of those 81,000 men, 1/3 were casualties. Killed, missing in action, or wounded. An incredible number, 2 days of battle. Rosecrans was put under a tremendous amount of pressure by General Halleck to do something down in this area. It all comes down to railroads and canals, and so he moved into this area. It was frigid cold. The Confederates made the first move, and similar to Shiloh, were very successful on the first day, and much less so on the second battle day. They ended up withdrawing from the field and leaving Murfreesboro in control by the Union Army. The two armies, 81,000 men, were now within killing distance of each other. As night settled in, a chilly wind rose through the cedar thickets and across muddy fields. The unsettling sounds of moving infantry and artillery could be heard. Some men tried to sleep, others reflected on the battle for the next day and thought of home. Through the darkness, the bands of both armies began to play. One band started playing Home Sweet Home, and other bands joined in. When the song finished, an uneasy silence lay thick in the night. For many in blue and gray, it would be the last song that they would ever hear. You can hear the cicadas. I just talked to a gentleman who lives in this area. He said it's once every 13 years that they emerge. 200 regular Army gunners of batteries H and M with 8 cannon fired for 4 solid hours using canister and just tearing apart the Confederates as they approached. They started at 8 in the morning and didn't finish until noon, December 31st, 1862. It's warmed up again. It's in the mid-80s. Not quite as humid as yesterday, but it's still plenty uncomfortable getting off the bike without air moving over my suit. But I think today is the last day of the 80s. I think tomorrow it's going to be in the 70s, and tonight I think it's supposed to be dropping down into the 50s, if I'm not mistaken. It should be good sleeping weather. I'm at tour stop number 2. This is the slaughter pen. The half-mile loop walk. The jumbled rocks you see here sheltered the 4 Union Regiment of Miller's Brigade during a hard 2-hour-long fight. Men in blue from Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania grimly held on tightly inside this limestone labyrinth. Then Sheridan's troops, who had been fighting on your right, ran out of bullets and broke ranks and ran. General Negley called for a retreat as waves of gray-clad soldiers threatened to overwhelm his men on 3 sides. This stone stronghold turned into an ankle-twisting death trap. Many of the men who fought here had seen the huge slaughter pens of Chicago's meat packers. When they saw so many dead and wounded men stacked here, the soldiers called this place the Slaughter's Pen. They got silhouettes out there of shooters. Slaughter's Pen occurred on December 31st, 1862. So it was the first day of the battle when things did not go well for the Union. Sheridan saves the day. By the middle of the night before the battle, Sheridan saw signs that Confederates might attack near here. By 4 a.m., Sheridan visited all 3 of his brigade commanders and gave orders for his men to be fed an early breakfast to be ready to fight. Other Federal divisions further south did little to prepare themselves for the onslaught. At dawn, the Confederates struck. Whole regiments of blue dissolved. Thousands turned and ran. Sheridan kept his men under tight control as they pulled back 1 regiment at a time. Here, Sheridan's men held the line for 2 hours, battling until they had no more ammunition. Sheridan's skill and will to fight brought General Rosecrans enough time to put his rattled retreating units into a strong new battle line near Nashville Pike. Stop number 3. This is stop number 3, the cotton field. Early afternoon, December 31st, 1862. For 6 hours, the Confederates had been on the attack. Their relentless onslaught had pushed half the Union Army back 3 miles. Tangled cedar woods and rock-filled terrain took their toll. An 1,800-man brigade of tired Tennesseans finally emerged from this tree line at midday. Momentum was slowing, though confidence still ran high. Facing them across the wide cotton field you see here were dense formations of fresh Federal troops. On the knoll, where the trees of the National Cemetery now stand, I think it's way over there, 38 enemy cannon blasted forth a steady firestorm of death and destruction. Many's Confederates dropped trees and dug trenches to fortify this line during the day-long lull in fighting on New Year's Day, 1863. It's going to be noisy at camp tonight with the cicadas. There's the cemetery, so you're able to shoot all the way over here. What a relief to get on the bike and move. It's like instant air conditioning. Stop number 4. In the Army of the Cumberland, the Northern Army, a brigade of pioneers handled all the Army's pick, shovel, and axe work with building roads and bridges. Officers picked 2 men from every company of every regiment in the Army for this duty. Many of the men who lined up to fight here in this knoll had been carpenters or miners in civilian life. What they had never been done before was to train to fight as a unit. So the leaders didn't know if they would break and run. But this battle line of untried road builders held fast and stopped the massive Confederate assault. This is late in the afternoon, first day of battle, December 31st. Hazen's Brigade Monument is down here to the left. After the battle was won, during the summer 1863, they built a fort that's further on down that maybe I'll go to about 10 minutes away. Veterans called this blood-soaked open ground ahead of you Hell's Half Acre. Here, a brigade of 1,600 blue-coat infantry faced wave after wave of attackers attempting to overrun them. 4 times Confederate brigades charged, and 4 times the defenders gave no ground. At dawn, 43,000 Union soldiers had stretched from McFadden's Ford 1 mile to the north to the Smith Farm 3 miles to the south. Can you imagine that? A 4-mile long battle line. By noon, half that huge army had folded back on itself like a pocket knife, closing with 13,000 men dead, wounded, or captured. 4 regiments that fought so fiercely here under Colonel William Hazen were the hinge of that folding knife. And from 9 a.m. to dusk, Hazen's men were the only Federals to hold their ground on the first day of battle at Stones River. It may surprise you to learn that monuments you see on most Civil War battlefields were built 30 or more years after the surrender at Appomattox. As battlefield veterans entered the final chapter of their lives, they wanted to honor and preserve the memory of the sacrifices they had seen. The Hazen Brigade Monument you see ahead is unlike any other. Union soldiers built it in 1863, just 6 months after the battle. At that time, the outcome of the war was impossible to predict. Comrades of the men buried here, not civilian contractors, laid up these stones. Before the famous marble monuments at Shiloh, Chickamauga, or Gettysburg existed, travelers riding the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad would see this somber stonework, a constant reminder of what cost Hazen's brigade to stand fast all day long at Stones River. It is the oldest intact Civil War monument in the nation. It's a little worn. Can't quite read the top. To the memory of its soldiers who fell at... Park Service was so kind to provide a clear writing of it. Hazen's Brigade. To the memory of its soldiers who fell at Stone River, December 31st, 1862. Their faces towards heaven, their feet to the foe, inscribed at the close of the war. Chickamauga, Chattanooga. I got graves in here as well. The veterans of Shiloh, this is what this inscription reads, have left a deathless heritage of fame upon the field of Stone River. All right, let's see if we can go to the fort. It might be a little bit of a ride. There's my faithful friend who takes me around and waits for me while I do my walking around the battlefields. He's always there waiting for me, ready to take me to my next goal. What a motorcycle. To give it some perspective, if you can see it, this was the main battlefield that we walked around in, but it's much larger in history than what was preserved. But here's Hazen's Brigade Monument, and I'm going to continue down West College Street to Fortress Rosecrans. There's a redoubt. Looks like a few things to visit there. See what time allows. Redoubt Brannan. This is part of the fort. The Civil War earthwork you see here is just a small part of Fortress Rosecrans. Almost 3 miles of earthworks, blockhouses, and cannon protected the railroad, warehouses, and ammunition magazines. We are here where the redoubt is. Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad ran right through it. Interesting. So that's why they placed it here. Union engineers laid out the walls large enough so that the defense could shelter 50,000 men and store food for the Army of the Cumberland for up to 90 days. This was a launching spot for heading southeast into the Confederacy. So they created a huge supply depot here. The warehouses of Fortress Rosecrans kept the Union Army supplied by rail as it drove south through the Confederate heartland to Atlanta. Once Sherman got to Atlanta, he could no longer count on the supplies coming from Fortress Rosecrans, so he basically ate his way. His army ate its way from Atlanta all the way over to the sea. Wow. The river has completely flooded this area out. That's from all of yesterday. Cedars of Lebanon State Park, 1937. Park office, camper registration straight ahead. Reservations, park office, camper check-in. It's 5:22 and
what I picked up in the local Kroger is a crunchy imitation crab roll, 10-piece, bagel, banana, chocolate donut for dessert, and milk. Campsite is right over there. This is mostly put together. Still got to put the top on the tent. Okay, set up my camp, had dinner. Time to relax a little bit. It is a little after 7 o'clock in the evening.